The banners of Chang'an fluttered in the warm evening breeze as twilight draped the imperial city in molten gold and crimson. Soldiers in lacquered armor lined the grand avenue, their spears upright, their faces as still as carved stone. Yet tonight was not a march of war, nor the clash of steel and banners. Tonight was a wedding. General Liang, the iron pillar of the Tang armies, stood at the center of the courtyard. His frame, broad and immovable, carried the weight of countless campaigns, and his scars were the silent testimony of loyalty to the throne. He had faced death on the battlefield without fear, but as he awaited the arrival of his bride, a quiet unease stirred within him. Whispers had long preceded the match. His bride, they said, was plain, unworthy of his stature, her family of little influence, the union little more than a political duty. Liang had accepted without protest. To him, a soldier's life was built upon honor, not beauty. Yet as the hour arrived, he could not still the pulse quickening in his chest. The palace courtyard was adorned for spectacle. Vermilion pillars coiled with golden dragons, lanterns swaying like captive stars, braziers breathing sandalwood smoke into the night. The gates opened, and a palanquin draped in scarlet gauze was carried in. All eyes turned as it halted before the steps. The bride descended. Veiled in crimson silk, she moved with measured grace, each step delicate yet firm, as though she walked not into ridicule but into destiny. Courtiers exchanged smirks, ready to confirm their gossip. Yet a few faltered, unsettled by the quiet composure radiating from her unseen face. General Liang watched in silence, his steady gaze betraying nothing. But deep within, a flicker stirred. Something unfamiliar, something far more dangerous than fear. The drums echoed in steady rhythm as the bride was led toward the great hall. The veil, crimson and flowing, hid her face entirely, but her bearing was visible to all. Each movement, her head slightly inclined, her steps measured with precision, was marked by a calmness that unsettled those expecting awkwardness. General Liang followed close behind, his boots striking the stone with the weight of command. His armor had been set aside for brocade robes of dark jade, embroidered with gold, but the aura of the battlefield still clung to him. The court watched him as they would a warlord, formidable, untouchable. Yet the bride beside him, though veiled, drew more whispers than his presence ever had. Inside, the hall shimmered with grandeur. Vermilion columns rose like forest trunks to a ceiling painted with golden dragons, their eyes glowing in lantern light. Officials took their places in careful order, jade pendants clinking as they bowed. The marriage rites began, ancient verses filling the space with solemn cadence. Liang bowed with the composure of a soldier carrying out duty. He had fought storms and sieges with the same expression, steady, unyielding. But when the bride mirrored his gesture, something shifted. The motion was graceful, precise, yet it held a quiet strength that felt neither submissive nor uncertain. It was the kind of strength he recognized from the battlefield, where stillness often concealed unfathomable power. Courtiers who had smirked earlier began to exchange uneasy glances. The woman hidden beneath the veil was not clumsy nor timid. Something about her presence contradicted the rumors they had trusted. General Liang did not allow his thoughts to show. He fixed his gaze forward, shoulders squared. But within, his certainty wavered, as though the ground beneath him had shifted ever so slightly. The marriage rites flowed like water from an ancient spring, each step a repetition of traditions carried across dynasties. Cups of wine were raised and set down, incense curled upward to the heavens, and the chants of officiants filled the hall in measured tones. To most, it was a familiar script, predictable and ceremonial. Yet tonight, an unseen current stirred beneath the surface. General Liang performed each duty without hesitation, his posture commanding, his movements precise. To him, The wedding was another form of service, an alliance forged for stability, not for love. His gaze swept across the hall, noting the courtiers' expressions. Many still wore faint smirks, convinced the veil concealed what rumor had promised: plainness. Their silent amusement was a weapon wielded against the unseen bride. But as the rituals unfolded, something shifted. Each time the bride lifted her hands to offer a bow, each time she tilted her head with composure, the murmurs grew quieter. The precision of her motions was not born of timid obedience, but of innate refinement. It was as though she carried within her a discipline equal to Liang's own, a discipline honed not on battlefields, but in the silent wars of endurance. A ripple of unease moved through the gathering. Ministers who had once dismissed her now leaned forward, their eyes narrowing with curiosity. What they saw was not plainness, but a presence that defied expectation. Liang, though outwardly stoic, felt it as well. The veil no longer seemed a barrier hiding weakness. It became a veil concealing mystery. Beneath it, he sensed something stronger than beauty, something that echoed the courage of a soldier who stood unbroken amidst chaos. The hall grew stiller, as if awaiting revelation. And within Liang's chest, a tension coiled tighter, unfamiliar yet undeniable. The banquet commenced, a display of wealth and tradition meant to honor the union. Long tables of lacquer and jade were laden with roasted pheasant, lotus root, dumplings shaped like crescents, and cups of fragrant rice wine. Musicians plucked guqin strings, their notes weaving through the air like threads of silver. Dancers unfurled silk sleeves in arcs of color, yet even their artistry could not draw attention away from the bride in crimson. General Liang sat at the head, posture straight, his presence still commanding. But as he glanced sideways, he found his thoughts pulled again to the veiled figure at his side. She moved with a calmness that was unshaken by the weight of the hall's scrutiny. Even the smallest gesture, the way she lifted her chopsticks, the way her sleeve brushed the table, was suffused with quiet elegance. The courtiers, eager to echo the old rumors, laughed softly among themselves. Yet their voices faltered when her poise revealed no trace of awkwardness. Whispers spread like wind over water. Perhaps the tales had been wrong, or perhaps beauty was not always measured by the surface of a face. Liang heard the whispers and dismissed them outwardly, his expression unmoved. But inside, a strange disquiet stirred. He had accepted this marriage as a duty, bracing himself for disappointment, for plainness to be the price of loyalty. Yet what he witnessed unsettled his expectations. There was strength here, cloaked in silence, and it resonated with him in a way the battlefield never had. As the lantern light flickered across the scarlet veil, the bride's hidden face seemed to grow brighter in imagination. Each moment added weight to the mystery. Liang realized he was no longer indifferent. He was waiting, as if destiny itself pressed forward, urging the veil to fall. The hall pulsed with muted energy, though the laughter and chatter of nobles rang hollow against the silence of the veiled bride. Courtiers raised their cups with polite blessings, their smiles edged with curiosity. The general, unmoved by flattery, accepted their words with the stoicism of a man used to commands, not compliments. Yet his thoughts, usually steady as stone, drifted again toward the woman at his side. She had not spoken a word, yet she had not needed to. Her presence alone carried a weight that silenced mockery more effectively than any defense. Each time she moved, whether to pour a measure of wine or adjust her sleeve, the hall seemed to pause, caught by the refinement of her gestures. There was no trembling, no timidity, only grace sharpened into quiet strength. Among the nobles, uncertainty took root. Whispers that once ridiculed now wavered, reshaped into questions. Could it be that the rumors of plainness had been crafted by envy or ignorance? Their eyes lingered longer, searching for cracks but found none. The scarlet veil that was meant to diminish her instead heightened the sense of mystery, turning every hidden line of her face into an enigma. General Liang felt the change. He too had believed the veil a barrier to disappointment, but now it loomed like a curtain shielding revelation, and his heart betrayed him with a pulse quickened by anticipation. It was not fear. He knew the face of fear well, but something far more unsettling, the possibility of wonder. The banquet continued, but the true performance was yet to come. Beneath the lantern's glow, the veil shimmered like fire waiting to be unveiled. And within Liang's chest, a soldier's certainty gave way to the stirring of fate. The banquet's grandeur reached its height. Musicians struck harmonious chords, their guqin strings resonating like flowing water. Silk dancers whirled in circles of color, their sleeves trailing arcs of crimson and gold beneath the lantern glow. Servants moved quietly between tables, offering jade cups and steaming platters. Yet despite the abundance, the true focus of the hall rested not on the feast, nor the prince-like general presiding over it, but on the veiled bride, whose silence commanded more attention than all performances combined. General Liang sat in solemn dignity, accustomed to being the center of awe. Yet tonight, he felt the tide shifting. Whispers now spoke not of him, but of her. He watched as she lifted a cup of wine, her sleeve slipping back just enough to reveal a hand of slender grace. The hall seemed to pause, captivated by the smallest of movements. Her silence had become a language stronger than words, an authority none could deny. The courtiers exchanged glances, some embarrassed by their earlier scorn. The veil, once a symbol of supposed plainness, now gleamed like a shroud of mystery. With every passing moment, it ceased to be a barrier. It became a promise. The longer her face remained hidden, the greater the anticipation grew. Liang's heart, trained to withstand sieges and ambushes, found no defense against the quiet storm stirring beside him. He tried to dismiss it, to remind himself that beauty was fleeting, that duty was eternal. Yet every instinct told him the veil concealed more than rumor had claimed. It concealed truth, a truth powerful enough to unsettle a general who had never known doubt. Lantern light flickered across the crimson silk. Destiny edged closer. The unveiling was no longer an expectation, it was inevitable. As the night deepened, the lanterns burned brighter, their glow spilling across polished floors like rivers of molten gold. The banquet pressed on with laughter and ceremony, yet beneath it all, the air carried a weight that none could ignore. The bride, silent beneath her veil, remained the unseen axis upon which the entire hall seemed to turn. General Liang, though outwardly calm, felt the tension coil tighter within him. He had weathered ambushes, sieges, and the cries of dying men, but this quiet anticipation unnerved him in ways the battlefield never had. His gaze strayed too often toward her, each time expecting to find weakness in her posture, only to meet the same unshaken composure. The courtiers shifted uneasily. Some who had laughed at the start of the evening now found themselves lowering their eyes in guilt. Others, though unwilling to admit it, felt drawn to the bride, compelled by the mystery that grew with every unspoken moment. The veil had become less a concealment than a flame, burning brighter the longer it remained. Liang's thoughts churned against his will. Was it possible that the rumors were lies, or worse, that he, the general who prided himself on piercing through deception, had been blind to the truth from the beginning? The unease pressed on his chest, sharp and insistent. A hush began to fall over the hall. The musicians faltered, their notes dissolving into silence, as though even art itself bowed to the gravity of the moment. Outside, the wind rattled through bamboo groves, the sound whispering through the walls like an omen. The unveiling loomed closer, and though Liang told himself he was ready, his soul already trembled, bracing for a revelation he could not name. The hall, once vibrant with chatter and music, now seemed cloaked in expectancy. Courtiers sat straighter, their fans unmoving, their cups untouched. The dancers had withdrawn, the musicians lowered their instruments, and silence pooled in the vast chamber like water in a deep well. All eyes fixed upon the veiled bride, her stillness more commanding than the roar of armies. General Liang, seated in solemn authority, could feel the weight of every gaze, yet not upon him, but upon her. For the first time in his life, the center of power slipped from his grasp, and he did not know whether to resist or surrender. His chest tightened as he watched the faint movement of her breath beneath the crimson veil, steady and calm, as though she carried the patience of mountains within her. Whispers rippled like the stir of reeds in the wind. When will the veil be lifted? The question hung unspoken on every lip, even as no one dared to voice it aloud. The air was thick with suspense, the kind that made each moment stretch unbearably. Liang's heart, disciplined by years of battle, betrayed him with its quickened pace. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. A soldier assessing the unknown. Yet beneath that thought lurked something deeper, a fear not of ugliness, but of the truth. That this woman might carry a beauty capable of shaking the fortress of his soul. The lantern light trembled, casting long shadows across carved dragons on the vermilion columns. Outside, the moon climbed higher, silvering the palace roofs. Inside, the veil glowed brighter, as though lit from within. The moment of unveiling no longer belonged to ceremony or tradition. It belonged to destiny, and it drew closer with every breath. The bride remained seated in silence, her veil gleaming like fire under the lanterns. Every noble in the hall leaned forward, their eyes fixed on her as though spellbound. The banquet dishes lay forgotten, the wine cooled untouched. Even the guards along the walls seemed caught in the stillness, their spears steady, but their gazes restless. General Liang's jaw tightened as he studied her. Duty had carried him through sieges and storms, yet tonight, duty had brought him to this hall, to this woman whose mystery consumed the air like thunderclouds before a storm. His heart beat harder, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous, anticipation. Courtiers who once smirked now whispered with unease, "Why does she sit so still? Why does the veil glow so brightly?" Rumors of plainness, once repeated with confidence, now sounded fragile, like pottery ready to shatter. Some ministers lowered their eyes, unwilling to meet the truth unfolding before them. Others could not look away, compelled as though drawn by a tide they could not resist. The general's hand clenched against his robe. He had not asked for beauty, nor had he sought it. He had agreed to this marriage as a soldier agrees to orders, without question. Yet as the silence thickened, he realized he had come to crave what lay hidden behind that veil. It unsettled him more than any enemy blade ever had. Outside, the wind sighed through the palace eaves. Inside, the veil trembled faintly, stirred by her breath, like the wing of a phoenix waiting to take flight. The hall was no longer a place of feasting, but a stage awaiting revelation, and in that moment, General Liang knew, when the veil fell, nothing, neither duty nor pride, nor the man he believed himself to be, would remain unchanged. The moment arrived with a hush so deep it seemed to silence even the wind. General Liang rose slowly from his seat, his figure towering in the glow of lanterns, his jade-embroidered robe shifting like the scales of a dragon. The hall held its breath as he turned toward the bride, his steps heavy with the weight of inevitability. He had faced countless enemies without hesitation, yet tonight his hand trembled faintly as it reached toward the scarlet veil. In his mind, he had prepared himself for disappointment, for confirmation of the rumors whispered across the court. He had told himself that beauty was irrelevant, that honor alone mattered. And yet, somewhere deep within, he feared that the truth, whatever it was, would undo the armor he carried within. The courtiers leaned forward as one, eyes wide, lips parted. Some prayed silently to witness her flaws, eager to validate their scorn. Others prayed for wonder, for the story to break free of rumor. The air was thick with expectation, every heartbeat echoing like a drum. The veil brushed against Liang's fingers, soft as breath. The crimson silk shimmered in the golden light, resisting for a moment before sliding free, drifting downward like a flame, extinguished in slow motion. Gasps tore through the hall. The veil collapsed into his hand, and her face was revealed. She was no shadow, no plain figure hidden by fate. Her features glowed with a harmony that defied words, eyes luminous as jade pools, lips shaped with quiet strength, skin radiant beneath the lantern light. Yet it was not beauty alone that struck him. It was the calm in her gaze, steady and unyielding, that pierced deeper than any blade. General Liang's soul shook. The hall erupted, not in laughter as some had expected, but in stunned silence, broken only by the sharp intake of breath from 100 throats. Ministers, generals and nobles who had smirked through the evening now stared wide-eyed, their disbelief painted clearly across their faces. Whispers, once cruel, dissolved like smoke before a gale. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was more than beauty that stilled the hall. It was the aura she carried, the strength in her gaze, the quiet authority in her posture. She sat unveiled, yet she seemed crowned by something greater than jewels or silks, an inner dignity that demanded reverence. The very air bowed around her, as though the gods themselves acknowledged her presence. General Liang stood motionless, the veil crumpled in his hand. His breath caught in his chest as he stared at her, a man who had faced the chaos of battle, now undone by the calm of a single gaze. His soul trembled with an unfamiliar force, awe, respect, and something deeper, a stirring that shook the foundations of the soldier he believed himself to be. The courtiers shifted uncomfortably. Those who had laughed behind their fans now lowered their eyes in shame. A few even bowed their heads instinctively, as though compelled by her presence. The hall, built to witness spectacle, now bore witness to revelation. She did not gloat. She did not smile in triumph. Instead, she held herself with serene composure, as if she had known all along that this moment would come. Her silence was not weakness, it was power, a power that filled the chamber more completely than any proclamation. For General Liang, the unveiling was no mere ceremony. It was the breaking of chains, the unmasking of truth, the beginning of something neither war nor duty could prepare him for. The silence lingered, stretched thin like silk across the vast hall. Then, slowly, it began to change. Nobles who once sat stiff with arrogance now lowered their gazes, their pride crumbling beneath the weight of truth. The whispers of plainness, repeated like gospel for months, had shattered in an instant. All that remained was awe. General Liang still stood before her, the veil clutched in his hand, his heart unsteady as if struck by 1,000 drums. He had faced the roar of enemy cavalry, the clash of steel on steel, the siege cries of men fighting for their lives, yet nothing had shaken him as deeply as the calm strength in his bride's unveiled face. His soul, once bound by duty alone, now trembled with reverence. The courtiers bowed, some in shame, others in reluctant admiration. None dared mock her now. The hall no longer belonged to them, nor even to Liang. It belonged to the unveiled bride, who had transformed scorn into silence and revealed dignity greater than beauty. She did not seek to revel in victory. Instead, she inclined her head with quiet humility, as though this revelation had never been about triumph, but simply about truth. Her gaze, steady and profound, met Liang's. In it he saw not only grace, but resilience, the strength of a woman who had carried the burden of rumor with patience until the moment came to shatter it. For the first time, the general bowed, not to an emperor, not to a battlefield, but to her. It was not submission, but recognition. In that gesture, respect was born, and with it, the first fragile roots of something stronger than honor or duty, love. And so began a union that history would not forget.